Hi again, folks. Before I forget, we're still listening to Nelson. You may notice I haven't changed my attire since previous experiment. It's because I'm doing them back to back, so I'll have some in the queue. So I won't be, oh my God, I have to get one done. We're going to do, excuse me while I go look at some notes. We're going to do character via exposition. And the phrasing character via exposition might confuse people because in number 14, we did exposition via character revelation via deep point of view. So before I get into those, let me explain the difference. Exposition via character revelation via deep point of view is when a character is thinking about the situation of the story, whatever is happening in the story, they're pondering it, they're going over it mentally, reviewing it. And an author can use that to reveal information about the story. It's going to be through that character's point of view, of course, but that's fine because that tells you something about the character, what they focus on. So experiment 14, exposition via character revelation via deep point of view, we're going to listen in to one character's ponderings about what's happening in the story. You just heard some jingling. That was my lad Boo. Hi, Boo. You good dog. You want to lay in bed? Good boy. He gets first shift all the time. Shift, that is. So that is telling something about the story based on the character, okay? And the character's thoughts. This time we're going to do character via exposition. It's going to look a lot similar, and the difference is subtle and very important because now we're going to talk about the character. We're going to reveal stuff about the character specifically. We're really focusing on the character based on what they're thinking. So it's a chance for the author to give the reader a really broad perspective of a single character. And you can do it by this character, contemplating or going over or reviewing someone else in the story, whatever, something that happened. But so long as it's them referencing themselves, it is character by exposition. And the example I'm going to give, let me close that window, is from Empty Sky, which is can you read that? Okay. It's a darn good book. You should get a copy. Get several dozen copies. Give them to your friends. And if you don't like the story, get several dozen copies and give them to your enemies. I don't care. Anyway, this is from chapter 8. Earl Pangiosi is introduced. Earl Pangiosi is, by many people's responses and comments, the best evil son of a bitch I've ever written or anyone else has ever written. People write me and tell me they really hate this prick bastard. So anyway, but people were Earl's focus. He tolerated the miasma of greasy hamburgers and soggy fries, too strong coffee and unwashed bodies, screaming children and louder screaming parents, and the occasional whiffs of diesel to indulge in a pastime he enjoyed since his childhood. Watching people's reflections in glass. He first noticed his gift on an early fall night, much like this one. Dad, suit and tie and freshly shaved and mustache neatly trimmed, drove their new 59 Burgundy Lincoln Continental back to the old neighborhood. Mom sat opposite Dad, wrapped in her furs, wearing her best clothes. Dad told her she wore clothes too tight sometimes, but she told him to never mind. Didn't he want everybody to know what he had every night? Mom and Dad left the old neighborhood a year before and never told Earl why. But once a month, maybe twice, he and Mom and Dad would get in the car and go back to the old neighborhood with presents for everybody. Dad was in the meat business, and he'd hand out steaks and chops and roasts and cutlets and hot dogs in summer and hamburger and ground pork if somebody wanted to make meatballs. Everybody was so grateful, and Mom would smile and nod as she stood beside Dad, his hands reaching deep into the coolers in the dark of the trunk, coming back into daylight, his hands full of brown paper wrapped meats neatly tied with butcher's twine. They asked questions about the new car, and Dad would tell them it was Lincoln, and Mom would correct him with Lincoln Continental. This is all stuff that Earl Pangiosi remembers based on what he was doing in present time. People were Earl's focus. He tolerated the miasma. And he's going into detail. This is, again, from his point of view. He's going into detail about greasy hamburgers, soggy fries, too strong coffees, unwashed bodies, screaming children. What happened there is I put basically all the senses. I activated all the senses. We have sights, sounds, smells, tastes, everything, whiffs of diesel since his childhood. So we know we're going back. Okay, we're going to go back in time, in the story's time. He watched people's reflections in glass. This occurs once before in the story. If you read the novel, or if you've been following with the experiments, Jamie, the story's central protagonist, also prefers to see people's reflections in glass. That's how he stares. That's how he talks to them, through the glass reflection. And now back in Earl's remembering what was going on. Dad's suit and tie and freshly shaved and mustache neatly trimmed. Very, very specific. We are learning that Earl is an individual who pays attention to specifics, to very tight traits. Okay? Suit, tie, freshly shaved, mustache neatly trimmed, drove their new 59 Burgundy Lincoln Continental back to the old neighborhood. Clothes too tight. So we're already recognizing that Earl, as a child, could pick up on some kind of friction between his parents. They left the old neighborhood. They never told Earl why. That comes out later. Once, maybe twice. Earl's dad and mom, would go back to the old neighborhood with presents for everybody. What are the presents? Earl's father, who works in the meat business, is giving them meat, is feeding them. Okay, so that tells us something about Earl's memory of his father. And again, very, very specific. Steaks and chops and roasts and cutlets and hot dogs in summer and hamburger and ground pork if somebody wanted to make meatballs. People would be grateful. Mom would smile and nod as she stood beside Dad. She's not taking part in the distribution. She's standing beside him, smiling and nodding. Dad's doing the work, his hands reaching deep into the coolers in the dark of the trunk, coming back into daylight. Again, the specificity of the sensory information. His hands full of brown paper wrapped meats neatly tied with butcher's twine. Detail, detail, detail. They asked questions about the new car. Dad would tell them it was Lincoln, and Mom would correct him, not them, correct him, correct Earl's father with Lincoln Continental. So Earl, as a young child, picked up on, without understanding what it was about, but he picked up on the friction, the tension between his parents, the attitude of his mother towards the people they left the old neighborhood. How come they left the old neighborhood? That comes out in that chapter a bit further on. But what we're doing is we're using exposition to reveal a lot about a character. What have we found out about Earl? He's really tight on detail. He's very specific in what he pays attention to. He's well aware of all the sensory information going on around him. He is sensitive from an early age to tension in people around him. And as we learn going on and on and on in the story, excuse me, Earl makes use of this as he matures, as he grows into adulthood, into his profession. If you don't know the story, Earl is one of the directorates of the NSA, and that plays a part in the story as well. So that is character via exposition. Hopefully that's useful. Practice, practice, practice. That's what I do. I do actually practice, practice, practice. I will sit down and I know what I want to write. This goes back to the previous experiment, but I know what I want to write. I'll give it a go. I'll give it a go. I'll give it a go. And I'll craft and I'll craft and I'll craft. And, add, take away, whatever. Okay, I got it. But character by exposition is a very powerful tool in my estimation. I use it a lot. You may read my stuff and say, use it too much, Joseph. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me know in a comment. I'd love to be taught something. Hope that's useful. Take care. I know where the stop button is, but my cursor is